everyone. My name is Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and I'm a host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is all about seizing opportunity, going after the things you want. So the thing that I really wanted to seize this year was I wanted to watch Halt and Catch Fire again, but this time I wanted to actually talk about it with real life humans. And so that's what's happening on this podcast. And we've up leveled it now because I'm getting a chance to talk with people who worked on the show. And this has been a blast so far. So get ready for a fun interview. Now, before I introduce today's guest, just a quick note that the recap episodes are spoiler free. You don't have to worry about getting any new information in those that you're not ready for. But these interviews could be spoiler filled. So who knows what we'll talk about today, and just be aware of that. If you haven't watched the whole show, just know what you're in for. So having said all of that, I'm so excited to introduce my guest for today, who is Bianca Malinowski, who played Debbie in season 1 of Halt and Catch Fire. Hi, Bianca.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you. I just have to say, so I'm pretty far into season 1 on this rewatch, and I've seen the show a bunch of times, and I've always enjoyed Debbie. But on this rewatch, there is so you didn't really have a lot on the page in a lot of episodes, but Debbie, I'm always so delighted. You put so much fun into every single scene that you're in. And I think there must have been a lot of thought behind that to get there. So I'm really excited to explore this today.
Yeah, so with Debbie, that role was sort of like I don't know if they listed it as recurring or not, but it might have just been like a guest star, like when I got the audition. And it was for starting in the 2nd episode. So I auditioned for it, and then when I got the role and I got to set, it was just one of those things where, I did my episode, and then I think everyone was just like, oh, we really like Debbie. Let's keep her around and put her in more stuff. And yeah, so that was pretty cool to kind of, in a way, that role, I don't know if they knew what exactly it was going to turn into, but have it kind of be inspired maybe by what I was giving on the day, and having it kind of develop into something kind of cool,
That's awesome. So it sounds like it was a pretty organic process, and there was it was sort of being written as it was happening for you.
Yeah, because I think we shot that episode 2, in December or November, and then we took a break for the holidays, and then we came back. And so I think just the writing process, maybe they were having some time to really think about it with I actually don't know exactly how much was changed or written, but I know a lot does change, especially with some of those smaller characters, they can do more adjustments and make a scene, for them.
Absolutely. Well, so you started to say a little bit about this, but how did you get connected with the show? Was it was an audition for you, or was there something else?
So what's funny is that, so I'm originally from Texas, and I was living in LA at the time, but I still had a Texas agent, as well as LA, I think I had a manager at the time. So my Texas agent submitted me for it, and the casting director, I think it was the Fincannons, I had booked some stuff with them in the past. So they knew me, and they were thumbs up, she's really great. So I got the role, but also I think a big part of me getting the role was he wasn't the showrunner, but he was the director, Jose, I think his name was Jose Andre. Yes, Juan Jose. Yeah. Yes, Campanella. Yeah. So he, because I'm half Latin, and he's Latin, and so I think he was just oh, like this could be really fun, because like I had the Texas accent because I'm from Texas. Um, and then also I think it was just like a fun casting choice, like for me to play the role. So I think the director obviously played a big part in me getting the part, I think. Yeah. And then the fact that the casting directors were fans of me. And then like I talked, like after I did a few episodes, Melissa Bernstein, like she came up to me like when we were shooting, and she was just like, I just want to let you know, like, you are doing so well with this role. Like, we really didn't know like what we wanted, and we weren't really sure like who was going to give it to us, but you just gave up. You're like giving us like exactly what we wanted, like, and more. So like, thank you for, just kind of stepping in and making it my own. Yeah.
It's amazing how many people are involved
Oh
in that
yeah.
process.
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you're doing television, you gotta, you go through the casting director, and then the director, and then the producers, and then the network, like AMC, like to get approved for everyone to like sign off on it.
Yeah.
So, and then you get the job. So,
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you did. Now, when you got the role, so you ultimately end up having what, 8 episodes in
yes,
season
I think
one?
so. Yeah.
So, season one is a critical time because the show is establishing everything. It's finding its voice. You're figuring out who the characters are. So, not really having any of that information, how did you prep for the role of Debbie? And maybe then how did it change when you started to come back for more and more episodes?
Yeah. So one really cool thing about working on that show in particular and for AMC was, I come from like a theater background. So when I started getting into costume, like when I started meeting with the costume department and started figuring out what Debbie was going to wear, and when I went to hair and makeup and like what kind of makeup she was going to have, and like when I got to set and like what her desk was set up as, I mean, it was the attention to detail from all the different departments was so helpful, because also it's a period piece. And so just getting to like slip into that time period and that person and that role, it was really helpful, just the show and like AMC and the quality in general, to help me absorb what I was doing more. And then also getting on set and having scenes with these other actors and working with these directors, because it was a really great opportunity. Like, it was an amazing cast with like movie stars, like working opposite them, and these really great like film directors, and it was just it was an easy experience, like, because everything was so well done, that I could just go and like have fun. And it all it like it usually when you get roles like it, I mean, not all the time, but like a lot of the time, like you just hope that like you get there and like it all makes sense for you, and you can just like be in it and like have fun.
You mentioned that a number of different departments were putting a lot of attention to detail of the things that Debbie was wearing, that was on his desk. Are there any particular things that you saw or were part of like the decisions for that really helped you access who Debbie was going to be? Anything that sticks out for you?
I mean, it was like small things. It's just like small attention to detail. Like, I think like her stapler or her colored pens. Like, I don't remember exactly what it was on the desk, but it was specific to Debbie. Like, somebody thought about it to like, when I get to work, like when I go do a scene where I'm at my desk, I have all these options of like things to play with, like the pens and the stapler and the post-its that feel very like, I didn't have to ask for that. That was just there. And then I feel like that informed me like even further on who this character was supposed to be in this story.
Yeah. So one of the things, and you started to mention it before, one of the things that's so interesting about Debbie, especially because we're getting to know everybody, is that you have these pretty big reactions and these pretty big sort of like these moments with our main characters where we're really understanding more about who they are. We're getting this other layer of how they are with other people in the office through Debbie and their interactions with her. So, when you think about the process for getting into scenes where you're trying to interact with characters that we don't even really know yet, what kind of process do you have for that?
Well, I feel like the other actors, like Lee Pace, Mackenzie Davis, Scoot McNairy, like that I worked with in some scenes, like I feel like their energy and their attention to, developing their character, it was just really me reacting. Like, like it was like in television, you don't get a lot of takes, like and it moves really fast. So they came very prepared. They came with so much energy and specificity to their character that all I had to do was react, like just take in like what they were giving me, because they would all give me a lot to work with. Yeah, so I don't know exactly if that answers your question, but I feel like it was just easy, like, get in my headspace as Debbie and then show up and just, have this scene with Mackenzie, that her energy and her vibe, it's just kind of going off what she's giving me. And that's really it,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it's not exactly that Debbie's a proxy for the audience, because the audience has more information about what's happening in the home lives of these characters, but you're definitely like the proxy for the rest of the office. It's helping us sort of get that whole picture of how these characters are actually seen by the other people that they're working with. So that was a really fun, I think it was a really important component to the show. Do you remember anything in particular? What do you remember about the process for shooting this show in comparison to other shows? Like, is there anything that jumps out at you as being especially different?
Well, I think compared to some of the other television shows I've done, I do feel like this one was giving the weight of a 1 hour drama, where like, we were shooting fast because it's television, and there's multiple cameras, multiple camera angles, like trying to capture everything at the same time very quickly. But it wasn't like, it was also like, a lot of the actors are like, okay, let's work this out, or let's make sense of this, like, because it requires, like, this type of project requires that type of work, where you really need to get down to like a finer detail, like underlying, like with these characters. So it's like, yeah, the people came prepared, but also on the day there was like maybe a little bit more time to like work on stuff, or that everyone understood that, we need to take some time to maybe work on this. Whereas like in other television projects, like if it's not something so weighted as something like this, it would just move a lot quicker. Like there would be no time to like discuss anything. So maybe like a little bit more time for discussion, but I mean, in general, it moves really fast. Yeah. You have like a rehearsal in the morning, and then, you go into hair and makeup, and then you come back and you do the scene like maybe 3 or 4 times. Like that's it. So,
it must have been like, oh, give me, like when you're in a few scenes, it must be like, give me more.
I mean, yeah, I was always like, what, but it's there is already so much going on in the show, like I think, it would have been maybe a little weird to like branch off and give Debbie her own storyline, because like there's so many other storylines like happening with all the main characters. I feel like if the character had been brought back for like another season, like maybe you would see that, but it really didn't make sense, because of the next season, like how it is different, a different space. Yeah.
But that
I mean,
would
it
have
could
been
have,
very interesting.
it could have, but I feel like it became more, I mean, actually, I didn't watch much of it, much of that next season. I think I watched like a little bit of it. And it just was like a totally different vibe with like the characters are just so different. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know how Debbie would have fit. I mean, that would have been interesting.
That's why it would have been
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Debbie kind of figured out how to hang with all the like, I guess sort of the older men in the
Mm,
office. And then,
yeah.
the mutiny house was just like a bunch of
Yeah.
young guys. So I don't know what
Yeah.
that would have been. But did you okay, so we mostly see Debbie in the office. There's maybe one exception to that. But
Oh, the party, I think.
there
Or
was a
there's still, yeah.
party, which
Yeah.
was still an office thing. There was a lot of
Yeah.
people. So it's sort of an asterisk there. But
Mhm.
did you ever make decisions about what Debbie's life was like outside of the office? What did you think about what her day to day was outside of there?
I mean, I think there was like one scene with Lee where he was telling me to take Mackenzie and like make sure she takes a bath and to like get her a bra and stuff like that. And she talks about that she had an apartment or a place like just, off of this street. And I definitely envisioned her, living by herself or maybe even like her mother. Like I don't know. Like it feels very uh she just felt very accurate to the time, like as far as like being in Texas, probably went to church somewhere like on Sunday, you know it was close with her family, like just a I she didn't have a boyfriend because I think when that one scene with Mackenzie, she's like, oh, like one of my boyfriends or something like that. I think she was probably single, probably like trying to like focus on her career, like, wasn't married. So I mean, interesting character, like for the time, like a young, secretary in this space, this new space. I think it was for her, it was like new and exciting, because I think it was very different. I mean, these characters, like Lee's character and Mackenzie's character, I think maybe Toby's character is more like who she's used to. But these other people, they come in and they're like these new and exciting, like people like from other places with these like cool ideas. And so I think Debbie was really excited to like be a part of it.
Yeah, let's get into that because your relationship to the other characters is so important. And I
Mhm.
think honestly, let's start with my favorite one because just the Bianca, the Debbie Cameron
Uh-huh.
relationship is like it's sort of rich with a lot of interesting subtext.
Yeah.
So I think the very first time we see those two characters interact, you're asking questions to Cameron about what Cameron's there to
Mhm.
do, but Debbie doesn't really understand the answer. So she just sort
Yeah.
of like tries to relate it back to something she knows. And we just see this huge eye roll from Cameron.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts, right? But then you were just referencing what I think might be my very favorite Debbie moment of all time, where Joe is asking Debbie
Yeah.
to get Cameron out of her. He's in the middle of basically a huge heist. He's trying to get a reporter who's come in to be interested enough in their company to do a
Mhm.
story about them. And the only way he can do that is by making it seem like disaster is striking. So his plan is to get Cameron out of the office and to get a cleaner to come in and pretend there's a power surge and wipe out all of her work, but
Mhm.
not really because he's got the backup discs. So he's trying to pull all this off. But the key is Cameron has to leave her office. So he goes to
Mhm.
Debbie and he says, Debbie, bring her back to your house, to have her take a shower, have her,
Mhm.
put on a bra. She should do that, right? And
Mhm.
you give like the greatest line read of all time. You're like, you know how she is, just
Yeah.
like this pure terror. So I'm really
Yeah.
curious, like what the what the relationship was with Cameron. Does that evolve as we go through from beginning to later? What does Debbie think about Cam?
Um, I think that I think for me, like I know we're talking about Cameron, but I feel like something that I always focused on was being the best secretary to Lee's character. And like that was like my number one thing. So it's like I think for me, Cameron was just trying to um like help my boss, like, in whatever way. Like it was more of like I didn't feel like, you know, necessarily like we were gonna be friends, you know, like outside of work maybe. I mean, I don't even know if I'm trying to really think about that, like how I feel like I probably just thought like she was so alien, and maybe I was a little like I don't really know like how to talk to her, like, you know. So but I think I was trying to help her, but you know, knowing that she probably, you know, she didn't ever want my help, kind of, you know, like with the clothes. I think there was that one scene like where I'm like, oh, there's a sale, like if you want to go buy a sweater, you know. So like trying to help her, but also just like not understanding her very much. Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this because it's not in any of the scenes, but I wonder what your take on this is. So Joe and Cam are hooking up from before either of them actually come to Cardiff.
Mm-hmm.
And the office doesn't find out about that until episode 6, like a pretty long time where it's
Mm-hmm.
not common knowledge in the office. What do you think Debbie knows about this? Do you think she knows what's going on? Do you think she's not? Is she somebody who's totally focused on her work, or does she have like a finger on the pulse of the office gossip?
Um, I feel like she probably just wouldn't see like Joe, like in her mind, it's like, oh, like can't really imagine like Joe, like, you know, wanting to be with Cameron. Do you know what I'm saying? Like in a way, like, um, because I think like in her mind, it, you know, I think like she really looked up to Joe a lot. And I just think that, I mean, I think she probably had a crush on Joe for sure. And I think there was like one scene where maybe I was like in his office and she was coming in or something, like something small like that. And I did feel like for a second that she was like, maybe she was like, oh wow, like, you know, he likes her, like, you know, like, and just like, okay, well then whatever, you know. But I think she did have probably a little crush on him. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I like
Yeah.
that. In terms of her relationship with Gordon, we get a little bit with Gordon, not as
Hmm.
much. But one of the first sort of major things we get is that Gordon at one point has to find a Cabbage Patch doll, Cabbage
Oh
Patch
yeah.
Kid,
Uh-huh.
and he is freaking out about it. And we are seeing very clearly that he does not handle stress well, and he's just
Yeah.
sort of angrily delegating things to Debbie, and you know he's trying to make it work also. But what do you think that working relationship was like?
I definitely feel like Gordon probably scared me like a lot, like, you know, and I think it's just being and I think she's just like, oh my God, like this is, you know, high stakes, like, but it's really the Cabbage Patch doll, but it's not like, you know, the computer. And so, but I think she's just trying to do a really good job. But I think that like, because now I remember that scene. Yeah, I think she was scared for sure of like Gordon. Yeah.
So I will have another Gordon question, but there's one sort of you as an actor question. So there was
Mhm.
an episode, let's see, it was 108. So it was the 214s. It's the episode where the
Mhm.
office gets raided. Boz
Mhm.
has stolen some money,
Mhm.
and you know, there's just chaos in the office. There's a lot of background noise. Just when you're an actor on the
Mhm.
set for, it was probably quite a lot of shooting to get like all of those scenes.
Mhm.
What is that experience like? What is it actually like on set for you?
I mean, like, I think something like that, I don't even know if I had lines in that. I feel like it was more almost like, you know, backgrounds, like in a way, like having to, um, you know, be active and like, because I think Debbie's character, obviously she wasn't like background, but like, that like the camera's probably going to cut to more of the like guest star kind of reoccurring characters, like more. So just always, and there were so many cameras, like that's the thing, like, the way they shoot television so quickly is they have like 3 different or 4 different cameras like shooting all these different angles, so you never know like when you're going to be on camera or if they're going to use that footage. So it's really like in that scene like theater where you're just like in it and you kind of got to stay in it because you don't know, and you just, there's not much direction. Like there may be some direction like from the director, like everybody, I need you guys to be louder or look more concerned, but it's just like kind of like a group effort to kind of make sure we capture the right energy. Yeah, so those are always interesting, and it's also usually sometimes more of like a wider shot too, so you can be like a little bit more physical than like a close up. Yeah.
It sounds like you had a lot of room to sort of not improvise, but to do what it felt like you were supposed to do, that there wasn't like screen direction for you on exactly every movement you were meant to be making.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like with television, like the director, they have so much to think about, and primarily, yeah, their main focus, like acting wise, are those main key like leading roles, and then going down to like the smaller roles, and then they give some direction, but you usually don't get like that much direction, um yeah, like nobody like sits you down and is like, okay, like this is what I'm thinking about, like for Debbie, and for you just got to do it. Like you just show up and you do it, and if you're not doing it right, somebody will tell you.
Yeah.
That's
No,
yeah.
that's interesting because I know I've heard a little bit about like what it's like to be in the back to be in a scene with like, I don't know, like music and dancing and a party, and
Mhm.
that's not anything on scene like what it looks like when you're watching it on screen. So it's interesting to hear that there is like having to be on all the time, but not actually knowing if the camera is really focused on you is
Yeah,
sort of like the stress that is meant to be happening in the scene too. So that sounds like it
yeah, no,
works
that's
pretty
true.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's always when you feel like you can relax on a take that they use that take like of your face where you're not like actually like all the way in it, like. So it's always good to be prepared because you never know what they're going to use. Yeah.
Yeah. One really lovely scene with Debbie is, Gordon, when they get their first shipment of the giant and everybody
Mm.
needs to test them, Gordon gifts it to Debbie, and the camera stays on her for a little while because she's really savoring it, and
Mhm.
kind of like, I don't know, it's a moment of real appreciation, and I don't know how often
Mhm.
Debbie gets that. So do you
Yeah.
remember that scene? What was that like? What were you conveying there?
Um, I feel like that's one of the scenes that like, for example, like the writers when they were doing the whole storyline, I don't ever think they ever thought in the beginning like we're going to do this scene with Debbie and she's going to get this computer and she's really excited. Like I think that after seeing like me and the character in some of the episodes, they probably came up with that moment like for a specific reason. I mean, I was, one of, I mean, in that world, like being a woman, like a secretary, like kind of, they were very demanding, like the bosses, and I was probably, there were some young people because the coders were kind of, young, and but that I think, I don't know exactly what the writers were trying to convey with that, but I do think it, like you said, I do think it was like special. It was like nice. It's like a nice moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to see Debbie get some appreciation there for like,
Yeah.
because I was just watching back an episode where she's in the office until like 2:30 a.m. because she thinks
Oh
Joe
yeah.
still needs her. So it's just like she's really putting in some hours,
Yeah.
well above and beyond for that team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like a little like Mad Men in a way, with the secretary, and like, who knows what Debbie's aspirations were, like, to see where she would end up, like, in all of it, but then it all changed. So
if you had to guess, where does she end up? Let's say 10 years later now.
I mean, I like, for Debbie, I would wish for her that she would like buy a ticket somewhere and move, like try to go somewhere like after this experience, because I do think it's a special experience for all those people involved, like just what they were doing and who they were working with and what kind of minds they were working with to get inspired to go do something else. Like, I don't know if she like just stayed in her small town. I think it probably changed her, like in a way, like working with Joe and that experience. Yeah.
Mm.
At least that's what I would want for Debbie. I would want her to like buy a plane ticket and like leave her mother's house and like try something to be on her own. And, not that she wasn't like an independent woman, because she had a job, but just to look for more, like after all of it. Yeah.
So it changed her.
Yeah. I think it would have. Pretty exciting things that they were like doing. And so I feel like she was probably like, oh, like this is all very interesting and different. Yeah.
So for you, are there any favorite moments that you had on set that jump out when you think about being on that show?
Feel like, for me, like kind of like what I was saying in the beginning, that I really appreciate like the costume and the set and the director, like the quality of things, because it's not all the time, like as an actor, where you get to work on something kind of like of that caliber, So I think when I got the role, I was really excited to work on an AMC show. Like at the time, like Mad Men had just wrapped, and like we were taking over like the Mad Men time slot, and that was like one of my favorite shows. And just to be like, I'm working with like these people. And like Melissa Bernstein, like coming off of like Breaking Bad, I'm like, this is like a really great opportunity, and like these Academy Award winning like director, like it was like a once in a lifetime, experience, like to kind of get to be a part of it, and just like, and then also like it's cool that so many people, catch on to the show like at different times, like years later, like after the show, people are like a resurgence of it, like when it got, I think, put on Netflix, like at a certain point or something. So it was just like a really cool opportunity that it, like, all in all, like it, and also to just kind of get to be funny and bring my take to it, like in something that no one had like a specific idea, and I just made a choice and it worked, so that was nice. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. It sounds like an experience, a well-rounded experience. You got a lot of different things from it. And I kind of feel the same way about Debbie too, because I feel like we kind of got a little bit of every emotion from her over the different situations she was in. So I think for both of you, it seems like there's a lot of sort of completeness, or it was a very complete experience.
Yeah. It was definitely exciting, and also like as an actor, it's nice to, because like sometimes when you do a guest star, you just go in for one episode. And so with this, like kind of building like a family or a friend group, or like, seeing these people over the course of like several months, and like getting to go back to Atlanta, because I was like flying back and forth. It was just like a lot of fun,
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you're up to now that you'd like to share? What's going on in your world?
Sure. So I do comedy. Yeah, so I got into, I had been doing improv and sketch comedy before, Halt and Catch Fire, and then after Halt and Catch Fire. And then I got into stand up before COVID. So I've been doing stand up in LA, at the Comedy Store. So like that's been really great, for me personally, because I do have like a comedic it's funny because people are like, when I tell people I do comedy, but then like my resume is like, it is a lot of like drama, but then I bring my own comedic side to, I think it's just natural. I think it just comes out. So I've been doing comedy and just writing. I mean, so Halt and Catch Fire, I was like thinking about it. That was like 10 years ago, which is crazy, that I think that we shot that, or I shot that. So I mean, it's been, getting into writing and writing. So like right now I have a television show that I wrote, with a friend of mine, and we're trying to sell it, so, and when I think about Halt and Catch Fire, the Chris's, the creators, they were young, like when they sold the show, which was pretty cool. So that was inspiring to be like, oh, okay. Like, and I think it was like one of their first shows they get sold, so it's cool to kind of branch out and try writing and try, selling my own TV show and doing stand up. So definitely like, out there auditioning, and I mean, it's just kind of a crazy time. Like television has changed so much, and like especially now after the strike and everything, like things are just, they're moving at such a slow pace that it was a nice time, like when things were just moving a lot faster before. I feel like in the last few years, like COVID and then the strike and then, all the things, like it just, I don't know what's happening in television anymore. Like when these shows find times to get made between, you know, pandemics and strikes. So yeah, but they're getting made. Yeah. So
the landscape is shifting so much, and the whole industry was already shifting anyway. I think there's so many more projects happening because of all the different platforms. So that changes things too. And it's been wild to watch it all unfold.
Yeah. So technically right now, like this should be pilot season, like back in the day, like this was pilot season. January, it would start like late January, February, March. And like by April, you would know if you were going to be on a TV show, like, if you like, so, but then that changed a lot, like in the last few years, like with all the different platforms and not really a traditional like network, like schedule. But I feel like I was talking to my manager the other day, and he was just like, yeah, like things have really changed. Like normally, let's say they're going to see 5 people, they see 1 person. So like the numbers are just like, everything's just, it's so different. Yeah. It's even, I don't know how things are getting done now. So
does it feel like the shift is in progress, or does it feel like you have a sense of where things are going to land?
I really don't know. I mean, I do think it's inspiring. Like when I go, like now, award season. So, all the actors going up and like, receiving their awards and giving their speeches and seeing how, the progress on the landscape of diversity and opportunities for women. Like, I think that is inspiring, to see the change in the industry, like in that way. But the process, I think, is more elusive. I feel like I feel like back in the day, it's like, you go, you get a manager, you get an agent, you go on audition, you book a role. Like now, like I don't know, like it feels strange times. Like like I don't remember the last time I went into a casting office because of the pandemic changed that. And then so I just don't see the casting directors anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So it just doesn't feel like anything's happening. Whereas like back in the day, when it's pilot season, you get all these auditions, and now it's just like things are just happening in time and space, and I don't even know like when or how, But what I was going back to what I was saying about the actors, with the award season, it is really inspiring where some of these actors, I think her name is Davine Joy. like she was in the holdovers. She was saying that, don't give up, don't lose hope, because like I was working for a long time, and I think she was working with Robin Williams, and he was like, this is a really hard job. You got to really love it. And she's like, I'm so glad I didn't quit. She's like, I'm winning all these awards right now, but she worked for a very long time before she won those awards. And now she was saying, I feel like this is the beginning of my career. She's like, everything can change like in a day. Like, I could be sitting here talking to you like, oh, I don't know, like I haven't seen the casting director, and I could get a call right now from my manager, like, you're gonna go see so and so tomorrow. Like, that's just how it works. So that part I feel like hasn't changed. Like, you can still, things can change really quickly. I just think things, like the landscape for things are really different, so it just feels like weird. Yeah.
It's a really interesting take on it. So many different factors influencing the industry. And, thank you so much for taking time to talk about this show and to talk about Debbie. And is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap up? Any other, thoughts that you've had about the show as we were talking that I didn't ask the right question to get you there?
Oh, no, I mean, I feel like you asked a pretty good questions. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, no, I think that's probably good. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this
Oh,
and
of
for
course.
giving us all more information about both the show and your character. You were part of the show at such a formative time. And so I think there's a real special quality about the actors
Hmm.
who are all part of season one. So thank you for the work you did.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was fun. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, go out there, watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye.